The rain was relentless, mirroring the storm inside me. Leopold, a 43-year-old architect in Seattle, had always prided myself on my ability to design structures that were both beautiful and strong, foundations that could withstand the test of time. Little did I know, the foundation of my own life was about to crumble. My wife, Meredith, and I had been married for 15 years. We met in college, two bright-eyed kids with dreams as big as the Space Needle. She was a vibrant artist, her canvases bursting with color and life. I was drawn to her free spirit, her infectious laughter, and the way she made me feel like anything was possible. Over the years, life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. We bought a house in the suburbs, a charming craftsman with a sprawling garden Meredith adored. I poured my heart into my work, designing eco-friendly buildings that I hoped would make a difference. Meredith continued to paint, her art evolving and maturing. We had our routines, our inside jokes, and a love that I thought was unwavering. Then came the whispers. At first, they were just fleeting moments of unease, a nagging feeling that something was off. Meredith started working late more often, claiming deadlines and gallery showings. She became distant, preoccupied, her laughter less frequent, her touch less affectionate. I tried to brush it off, attributing it to stress and the demands of her career. But the whispers grew louder, morphing into a chorus of doubt that echoed in my mind. One evening, I decided to surprise Meredith at her studio. I brought her favorite coffee and a bouquet of sunflowers, hoping to rekindle the spark that seemed to have faded. The studio was located in a trendy warehouse district, a space she had rented with a few other artists. As I approached the building, I saw Meredith through the large windows, her back to me. She was talking to someone, her voice animated, her face radiant. I smiled, relieved that she seemed happy even if it wasn't with me. But then the man turned and my blood ran cold. It was Jasper, a sculptor who had recently joined Meredith's studio. He was younger, more rugged than me, with a reputation for being a charmer. They were standing close, too close, their bodies almost touching. And then he reached out and brushed a stray strand of hair from her face. The way she looked at him, the way she smiled, it was a look I hadn't seen in years, a look that used to be reserved for me. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I felt like I was watching a movie, a nightmare unfolding before my eyes. I wanted to scream, to run, to disappear. But I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by disbelief and a crushing sense of betrayal. I watched as Jasper leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a quick peck. It was a deep, passionate kiss that seemed to last an eternity. I stumbled back, the coffee and sunflowers falling to the ground. I turned and ran, tears streaming down my face. I didn't know where I was going, didn't care. I just needed to escape the image that was seared into my brain. I spent the next few hours wandering the streets of Seattle, lost in a fog of pain and confusion. I couldn't understand how this could be happening. How could Meredith, the woman I loved, the woman I had built my life with, betray me in such a callous way? What had I done wrong? Where had I failed? Finally, I found myself at a dive bar near the waterfront. I ordered a whiskey neat and downed it in one gulp. I needed something to numb the pain, to silence the voices in my head. I ordered another one, and then another. The alcohol dulled the edges of the pain, but it didn't erase it. The image of Meredith and Jasper kissing replayed in my mind over and over again. I went home late that night, the rain still falling. Meredith was asleep in our bed. I stood in the doorway watching her, my heart aching. She looked so peaceful, so innocent. How could she be capable of such deceit? I wanted to wake her up, to confront her, to demand an explanation. But I couldn't. I was too hurt, too angry, too afraid of what she might say. I spent the night on the couch, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. The next morning, Meredith acted like nothing was wrong. She made breakfast, chatted about her upcoming art show, and asked me about my work. I couldn't bear to look at her, to pretend that everything was normal. I mumbled something about having a meeting and left the house. I drove to my office, but I couldn't focus on work. I kept replaying the scene at the studio, trying to make sense of it. I knew I couldn't stay in this limbo, pretending that everything was okay. I needed to confront Meredith, to get the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I went home early that afternoon. Meredith was in the garden tending to her flowers. She looked up when she saw me, a smile on her face. "Hey, you're home early," she said. "Everything okay?" "No, Meredith, everything is not okay," I said, my voice trembling. "I saw you last night at your studio with Jasper." Her face paled. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the fear. "Leopold, I don't," I said, cutting her off. "Just tell me the truth. How long has this been going on?" She hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "A few months," she admitted. It just happened," I repeated, incredulous. "You kissed him, Meredith, I saw you. It didn't look like it just happened." Tears welled up in her eyes. I know, I'm so sorry, Leopold. I didn't mean for it to happen, it just we connected. He understands me in a way that you don't." Her words were like a knife twisting in my heart. "I don't understand you," I said, my voice rising. "I've spent 15 years trying to understand you, Meredith. I've supported your dreams, I've loved you unconditionally. And this is how you repay me." "I know I'm a terrible person," she sobbed. "But I can't help how I feel. I'm not happy, Leopold. I haven't been happy for a long time." "So you decided to cheat on me instead of talking to me?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's your solution?" "I didn't know what else to do," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I was afraid of hurting you." Hurting me now, Meredith," I said, my voice cracking. "You're destroying everything we've built together." We stood there in silence, the rain starting to fall again. The garden, once a symbol of our love and shared life, now felt like a prison. I couldn't look at her, couldn't bear to hear her excuses. "I want you to leave," I said, my voice flat. "I want you out of my house." She looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. "Leopold, you don't mean that," she said. "We can work through this. We can go to counseling." "No, Meredith," I said, shaking my head. "I'm done. I can't trust you anymore. I can't live with you knowing that you're capable of this. I want a divorce." She started to cry, begging me to reconsider, but I was resolute. The betrayal was too deep, the wound too raw. I couldn't forgive her, couldn't forget what I had seen. I spent the next few weeks in a daze going through the motions of daily life. I hired a lawyer, started the divorce proceedings, and tried to focus on my work. But the pain was always there, a constant ache in my chest. I lost weight, couldn't sleep, and felt like a shadow of my former self. My friends, Emmett and Silas, were incredibly supportive. They took me out for drinks, listened to my rants, and tried to distract me from my misery, but nothing seemed to help. I was haunted by the memory of Meredith and Jasper, by the realization that the woman I loved had betrayed me in the worst possible way. One evening, Emmett suggested that I try to find out more about Jasper. "Maybe there's something you can use against him," he said. "Get some leverage in the divorce." I was hesitant at first. I didn't want to stoop to their level, to engage in petty revenge. But the anger and resentment were still simmering inside me. I wanted to make them pay for what they had done. I hired a private investigator, a gruff woman named Imogen who specialized in infidelity cases. I gave her Jasper's name and address and asked her to dig up anything she could find. A few days later, Imogen called me with some interesting information. It turned out that Jasper had a history of affairs. He had been married twice before, and both marriages had ended because of his infidelity. He was also in serious debt, owing money to several creditors. Imogen also discovered that Jasper had been using Meredith's studio to launder money. He was selling fake sculptures to wealthy clients, using the studio as a front for his illegal activities. I was shocked and disgusted. Meredith had not only cheated on me with a serial adulterer, but she had also gotten involved in his criminal enterprise. I couldn't believe how naive and foolish I had been. I decided to use this information to my advantage. I contacted the authorities and provided them with the evidence Imogen had gathered. They launched an investigation into Jasper's activities, and he was eventually arrested and charged with fraud and money laundering. Meredith was devastated. She claimed that she had no idea about Jasper's illegal activities, that she was just a victim of his manipulation. But the authorities didn't believe her. She was questioned extensively and eventually charged with being an accessory to his crimes. The divorce was finalized quickly and quietly. Meredith lost everything: her studio, her reputation, and her freedom. She was sentenced to a year in prison, while Jasper received a much longer sentence. I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that they had both been brought to justice. But the victory was hollow. I had lost so much in the process: my marriage, my trust, and my faith in humanity. I moved out of our house and into a small apartment downtown. I threw myself into my work, designing new buildings and trying to forget the past. But the memories were always there, lurking in the shadows. One day, I received a letter from Meredith. She was writing from prison, apologizing for her actions. She admitted that she had made a terrible mistake, that she had been blinded by her own selfishness and insecurity. She said that she was deeply sorry for hurting me and that she would never forgive herself. I read the letter with a mixture of emotions. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to offer her some comfort, but another part of me was still too angry, too hurt. I didn't know if I could ever truly forgive her for what she had done. I never responded to her letter. I didn't know what to say. I needed time to heal, to rebuild my life. I knew that I would never be the same person again. The betrayal had changed me, hardened me. But I also knew that I couldn't let it define me. I decided to focus on the future, to create a new life for myself. I continued to work hard, designing buildings that were not only beautiful but also sustainable and resilient. I started volunteering at a local homeless shelter, helping people who had lost everything. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. And slowly, gradually, I began to heal. The rain still falls in Seattle, but now, when I hear it, I no longer feel the same sense of despair. I know that storms will always come, but I also know that I am strong enough to weather them. I have learned a valuable lesson about love, trust, and betrayal, and I have emerged from the wreckage a wiser, more resilient man. Life goes on, even after the most devastating betrayals. It's about finding the strength to pick up the pieces and build something new, something better. It's about learning to trust again, to love again, to believe in the possibility of happiness, even after the storm has passed.